Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here for the continuation of a very important ceremony that started this morning. And as we start, I'd like to acknowledge our firemen, our fire keepers that are keeping this very important fire burning at the heart of our day today. If you haven't seen so already, there is the opportunity to write some small notes of gratitude, of your good thoughts, of your hopes for residential school survivors, for all of the children that never returned home from the schools, for the parents left behind, for the families affected by this terrible legacy of genocide that we're confronting in today's ceremonies around the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. My name is Ry Moran, Dijanakas Wabikanyu. I'm the Associate University Librarian for Reconciliation here in this building here. I do hope that I get to see you inside of the library at some point. I'm going to be hosting a dialogue today with three incredible people who have been doing such important work on campus and really across the country, helping us live into our responsibilities as a community, as individuals, as members of this family we now call Canada. So with that, I'm going to sit down and join this panel here. I'll just proactively say I'm sorry that we're getting a little bit started a little bit late. We've just come from a really beautiful and very important ceremony, and we're actually going to talk about that ceremony just to get started off with. So I'm going to wander over to my chair here, and then we're going to introduce the panel, and we'll get started with our conversation. Most importantly, I really want to say thank you for showing up today. It's really good to see your faces out there. It's good to see you showing up, and I really want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here. So with that, you can still hear me. Great. I'll just very briefly introduce the panel, and then you can briefly introduce yourselves as well. But to my right, Dr. Andrea Walsh has been doing exceptional work on a whole bunch of different kinds of stuff for a very long time. Chancellor Sheila Rogers, CBC radio personality, Chancellor Extraordinaire, honorary witness of the TRC, as is Andrea Walsh. And Dr. Lisa Kalnichuk, our Vice President, Research here, who's going to be providing both some closing remarks and then participating in this really important discussion that we're having today. So, anything you want to say to get us started, or? Sure. All right, good. There, we got an opening.
Well, okay, yes. I guess I'll just go into Chancellor mode for a second.
Sounds great.
And say thank you so much to everybody who's come, to those who have waited. And it's so beautiful to see this flood of orange. As Ry said, thank you for showing up. Showing up is the beginning. When people say, what can we do? I think the first thing to do is to show up. So many thanks to you for being so patient. And we have just come from an amazing ceremony. 6 of our UVic elders who attended either day school or residential school were blanketed according to Coast Salish protocol. And it was beautiful to see this. The blanket offers protection, it offers warmth, and the ceremony was an honoring of everything those elders have gone through, but also what they've brought to the university so generously, and acknowledging how much they care for everybody on the campus, but especially the students, understanding that families have sent their students away to school, and we have a duty and a responsibility to care for them. And the elders have really guided us in that. And they've also just been so loving and so generous. So to see them honored in this way, I guess I feel like I'm vibrating inside, because you know when something is right, you feel really good inside. And so we're just kind of humming here. It was very powerful. And Yeah, it's just, this is where we're beginning from. We were all there, we witnessed it, and it was an honor. Oh, yeah, beautiful.
I think that I would, I want to say thanks to Ry for thinking that I've done awesome things.
You have.
Oh,
You have.
I have done awesome things with amazing people, and I just want to acknowledge that by sitting here, I'm actually carrying the stories I've been given by many survivors with whom I've had the privilege to work with. I would just add that I actually work in the Cornet building, so if there's anything that I say, I'm a professor in anthropology, and I'm very lucky to work here as a professor because I actually was a student here when I had a different hair color.
You can still change it.
There's still time. I might do Sheila's rainbow thing. That was pretty cool. But I was reflecting on what the ceremony that we've just come from, and I was reflecting on time and the passage of time and how we're all gathered here today and why we've come here today. And largely, I want to kind of step back. We've come here because we're here as students or professors to the university. And I can remember, now this is where I sound old, I can remember a time when there wasn't a First Peoples House. When we were here as students, and this was in the late 80s and 90s, when the Native Students Union met in the Clarihue building. We rented a classroom, and there was about 10 or 12 people that would gather, and we carried on. And as I did a visual arts degree, and I can remember the first time an Indigenous artist came into the class, and I just felt absolutely emancipated from the kind of box that I felt like I was being educated in. And I think back to that time on campus, and actually I was here before that because my dad was a professor here in economics, and I got here 51 years ago. So I've seen this campus evolve, and the people who've come here are coming here with the same good intentions as they were decades ago, but we're here in a different time. And when I reflect on the way that the university's campus has changed physically through its architecture, through the people that have come through here, so too have the events that we attend while we're here. And that brings us why we're here together today. And there's one thing that I kind of resonate, I think I resonate between the two poles that I've just described, that feeling of watching Tomasantha Charles Eliot walk into the classroom in 1989 as a sole Indigenous voice, and what we have here on campus now, and the beautiful ceremony that we've just been through with the elders. And in both instances, I've come away with profound, humble awareness of how much I don't know and how much it's important to learn. I think what the difference is beyond the architecture, beyond the bodies that are here, is I really want to stress, and I've thought about this a lot as an honorary witness and as a professor. You and I are living and privileged to be here in an extraordinary time. In another decade, we won't have this day. And the reality is that, like me and my hair, we're all getting older, and we have these beautiful voices and teachings, and this is a gift to us. As those who have come to this place to listen, this is a gift, and it is not a gift that's going to be available to my children and to their children. And that gift is to sit and listen and to witness the truth that is being told to us. We will always have those publications to go back to. They're in print, they're on digital record. The bodies of the beautiful elders that sit with us, the survivors that are here with us now, are fleshy, immortal, and they will pass through just the way we will. And so I really, if I can encourage you to do one thing today, it's to recognize this gift that you've been given, whether you're in science, art, language, music, economics. You've been given a gift to walk through this campus today. Recognize the land that we're on and the stories that it carries, and the people who have come to us with the gift of telling their truth. And I think that that's the most beautiful thing that we can do, is sit and listen and take away days like today as part of why we come here to UVic. So I would just like say that that's what that ceremony meant for me, was just reflecting on the way in which this place evolves as a place of learning.
That's really powerful, Andrea. And I've certainly been struck with that sense of history, really, well, certainly ever since I joined the TRC. I can reflect back on so many moments, even we were sitting around the board table even, and feeling the weight of history on our shoulders as we were making a decision between left or right, or which action do we take to try to help at least a little bit give us the opportunity to get to this moment and all these other moments that are down the road that we haven't yet discovered. And I think this panel that we're having right now is about the present. You know, this morning's was about the past. We heard from Mark Atleo. He was talking about his very painful memories of what he experienced in the residential schools. And we were talking a lot about what's happened. But if we pause for a second and we think about where we are right now, this gift that we have, we're standing on the cusp of the first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, now a federal statutory holiday, a new statutory holiday. This hasn't happened in my lifetime before. And like you, I once upon a time had different hairdo as well. So we're living in exceptionally historic times, and I even think about, well, as I look out to this fire, the first fire that we lit with these fire keepers that we have here. I mean, we burned a 4-day ceremonial fire when the children were found at Kamloops, to Kamloops, Sequekmuk. And I think that was a first as well. That was the first time we've lit a 4-day fire, and those fire keepers kept that burning 24 hours a day. This community that we are so privileged to be a part of, coming together to keep that fire lit and keep that fire lit inside of us. And Sheila, maybe just coming back to you, I mean, you were so present at our Truth and Reconciliation Commission national events. I mean, you're an honorary witness, as is Andrea. But one of the things I think about when I think about your role with the commission is hosting all of those dialogues of reconciliation and being present for that and hearing these huge rooms of people coming together to talk about these times that we're in. And I don't know, do you have any reflections on what that dialogue was and is and remains? And yeah.
I'm very grateful. We all owe so much as a country to the survivors who really set the whole truth and reconciliation movement into motion through their courage, through telling their testimony, for sharing it publicly, which was such an innovation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that the public was invited to come and to witness as well. Andrea and I were named honorary witnesses, which really were honored witnesses, not honorary. It was a tremendous privilege to listen to the lived experience of survivors and their families as well. And I think that my biggest takeaway isn't going to be earth-shattering, Ry. Just, I'm glad you're sitting down, because, but it's about listening. It is all about listening. Yes, we had circles of dialogue, but the most important thing I think you could do was to listen. And I'll tell you a little story. The first TRC gathering, well, where I was inducted as an honorary witness, to always share the story, to always make sure that if you heard something that wasn't true about what you had just witnessed, that you would stand up for the truth and always tell what happened, tell what you heard, what you saw. And I came across an old colleague from Northern Literacy, and I didn't know she was a survivor. And I went up to her in a break and said, I had no idea, and I asked her a million questions, and how long were you in school, and how was your family, and how far away did you know? It was ridiculous. And she said to me, Sheila Rogers, shut up and listen. And I was taken aback, but it was the best advice I've ever been given. And so to not get in there, to not ask questions, to sort of, show how, yeah, you're really getting it, you're really understanding this. No, no, no. The job is to listen, and to listen for understanding. To listen so that you can then take the story and share it widely with people who don't know the story, because we all need to know this story. So that was probably, I wish I could tell you, yeah, we changed policy, and maybe we did, but it was really about learning to listen. And if this country learns to listen, I really feel that the university has learned to listen over the last, since the end of the TRC in 2015. I've seen enormous changes, Andrea. Like you've seen really big ones, but just in my time here in 7 years, I almost don't recognize it in a good way, in a really good way. Seeing all these banners, seeing the library bathed in orange light after the 215 plus were being talked about, that fire happening, it's like, this is just so wonderful and so honorable. And it's a sign of listening. We need to listen deeper. And it was pointed out to me that the letters in silent and listen are exactly the same. And if you've ever had dyslexia, like I have, maybe you've said silent instead of listen. But it's really critical. And I'm going to throw it to Andrea in a sec, but there was an elder who was talking to a first-year law class, and she got up and she wrote the word heart on a blackboard. Andrea, you were there when she did this, Carla Point. Mm-hmm. And she looked at the word heart and said, this is where you've got to listen from your heart, not always from your brain, though we know how important critical thinking is, and to ask good questions, but listen from your heart. And then she pointed out that right in the middle of the word heart is the word ear. So, it was a really good instruction and a good listen to remember to listen from your heart.
When I was listening to you, Sheila, I was listening to words of advice, like on how to be a witness, how to engage this history of genocide. And one of the things that I've also thought about a lot, and I share this with people sometimes as a prof, and the work that I've done at the university, I won't talk about it in depth, but if you're interested, I can talk about it on another time. The university received over 700 works of art by children who were in residential schools on the island here at Alberni, and also at the Mackay School in Dauphin, Manitoba, and also some work from back east. And at the time, the TRC was happening, and I was privileged to work with the university to not accept that gift of artwork as the legacy of residential schools that the university could teach with, talk about, etc. Rather, we've been on a 10-year mission to repatriate every single piece of that artwork to residential school survivors. And we've so far been very successful. And when I said I sit up here with the supportive collective of residential school survivors, they're the survivors with whom I've worked for that decade. And I've thought a lot about the work that I've done through the university as an honorary witness. But I think what Sheila said is, how do you get a country to listen? We have to remove ourselves from these artificial titles and these identities that are non-permanent in our lives. So all of you will be coming here. We're all gathered because we come here to the university in different ways, as students, as professors, as administrators. But when I think about it, these are only moments in our life. And although I'll spend 35 years at this institution, it will never define me. And what defines me when I think about my role and facing the genocidal history and ongoing colonialism in Canada is who I am with the name my parents gave me. And I would ask all of you to go home, and if you don't know whose territories you were born into and on whose territories you grew up as a child, there are wonderful apps to be able to put in your hometown and find out whose lands you grew up on. Whose lands are you living on now? The second thing I would ask of you in the journey of learning to position yourself as a witness is to also, there's wonderful apps available to plug in your hometown and find out where was the nearest residential school to where I grew up. And if there wasn't one near me, how far did those children travel to go to one? And I think as soon as we begin to use the names that our parents gave us to locate ourselves in our country's history, then we start to move. Then we start to move as a collective. And I appreciate like nobody's business being able to work here. And this is my career. My father was here. I love this institution with all my heart. But it is that. It's only ever going to be buildings unless we change how we move through them. And so I think we can talk in big terms, you know, like TRC, and I'm overwhelmed by the TRC, like I am still. And I don't know how to wrap it into my head and into my daily life all the time. So I go to the little things, the small steps. Who am I today? Whose land am I on? And what stories will I carry with me through the day as a professor here at the university? And I think we can all do that. And the more we normalize that, the more we begin to shift the present and we start to make space for a future. And I think that's our work right now, is just making space. And I don't think I'll be honest with you, I feel really, really small in this big thing. And I don't know how to make a difference. But I think if we just think, what will I do today as an individual with the name my parents gave me? How will I walk forward differently than I did this morning or yesterday? That's what I would say.
This theme of listening is so powerful, and I just want to say, obviously, thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to listen to both of you. And Lisa, I know you've been doing a lot of listening on campus in the last little bit, and I know you're going to make some closing remarks in terms of where we're going, but I wonder if you could just give us a little bit of an insight in terms of what you're hearing, too, because I think it's important to give us a bit of a finger on the pulse in terms of where we're moving as a community. You know, Andrea, you talked about, you know, this being an institution, but it's the people here. You know, it's this incredible combination of students and faculty and administration coming together, and elders like we just experienced, and librarians. Yes, that's right. You know, coming together with a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. And certainly this work of truth and reconciliation is something that is bigger than all of us. We're all kind of figuring out how we fit into this in our own roles. But I don't know, Lisa, any thoughts on just, you know, where we're at? What have you heard in the last little bit as we think about, you know?
Yeah, I'm really struck, you know, by the words of Sheila and Andrea here, and I would agree completely about the importance of listening. And already today, it's been so amazing to hear these stories and to see the emotion and the pain. But when I think about the university and the opportunity that I had across the past year to talk to faculty and students and staff in every one of our academic units, the first thing I learned was how many Indigenous scholars, students, and staff members we have at UVic. And that was really exciting to see. And I think being inspired by their optimism, but also becoming aware of some of their challenges, some of their frustrations, and listening to the vision they have for what UVic can be for them as a community and for all of us as a united group as we, you know, seek inclusion and we seek justice and a good environment for everybody. And so What I learned is that we have a lot of work to do, and I'm going to talk about some of that in a few minutes. But I think the excitement and the optimism of the Indigenous scholars at UVic was really infectious, and so I feel buoyed by that. And I'm proud of this university because I think we have an opportunity to do something really special if we all come together. And if we listen, if we do the hard work together, I just think that we can really achieve something here that will be special and wonderful.
You know, as you're saying that, I think about the words that I suppose are already history now because they were spoken, 45 minutes ago, but as we were leaving the ceremonial hall over here, and the speaker was saying, wishing the elders good feelings, to not leave with the pain there, but to know that there's this big sense of support. I hear you saying that, Lisa, that there's still this huge sense of optimism that we can overcome, that we can get through this. And I don't know, Sheila, if you've got any reflections on, you know, some of I think our favorite conversations around hope and optimism, but you know, as a segue into this, I've been reflecting on some photos that I even took at the Walk for Reconciliation at the closing events of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Ottawa. And for those of you that didn't have an opportunity to be there, it was really an incredible moment. We started over on the Gatineau side of Ottawa, and we walked across the bridge past Victoria Island where the Sacred Fire was lit. We came around the corner, and it was just as we came around the corner onto Wellington, which is the main street that goes in front of Parliament Hill and Library and Archives Canada and the Supreme Court, kind of the bastion of Canada in a way, like we're in the mothership there. You know, the crowd just got enormous, and it was literally people as far as we could see forward and as far as we could see backwards. And a couple of the signs, a lot of the signs that were held up, the TRC had signs saying, "It's time for hope." And there was other signs that people were carrying that said, "We are all in this together." You know, and Sheila, I know we've talked a lot about this sense of optimism and hope and love, and just what are your thoughts about where we're at right now in the present for that? Because it's complex, right?
I love thinking about the walks because there were thousands of people all walking together, talking together for a common purpose, and to draw attention to this process, to point towards hope. The Chancellor of the University of Manitoba right now, Anne Mann, has said to me that hope is our duty. Hope is the work that we have to do. And I believe our president had said that hope is it's a forward-thinking action. And it will help position us into something good if we hold on to hope and actively practice it. And in those walks, what was beautiful was, you know, you're right, they would start off small, but they kind of pick up people as they went. And I remember the walk in Vancouver on the last day of the TRC event in 2013. It poured rain. It poured rain. And Evan Adams, Dr. Evan Adams, and I were co-hosting the stage event right before the walk, and all we could see in front of us was a sea of color of umbrellas popped up, you know. And we knew that there would be 2,000 people, and then we started hearing police reports that there were 5,000, and then 10,000. And at the end of the day, there were 70,000 people walking in the rain. And we can do this. I mean, today, as we were listening to Mark and to you this morning, and to Kwal Siamat, who's such an honor to be with you today, and you, Lolita. Just you know, it's just really, it's possible. I feel the possibility. And the fact that, I don't know, do you have to go to classes or anything? You know, but here you are standing, and it's, you know, it's not warm and balmy. I mean, I'd kill for a hot flash right now. I really would, but I can never get them when I want them. But people will stand through this because they believe. And your belief means a lot. I know it means a lot to the survivors. It means so much for them to be believed, as Mark was saying this morning. Awful things happened, and as Victor Underwood was saying, people didn't believe his experience. The government didn't believe his experience. Believe survivors. This is going to make our country better. Beyond hope, this really will make our country better. And the weather. All the TRC gatherings would start off in the sun, and they were usually 4-day events, and the middle 2 days, usually it rained, and that was exactly when survivors and their families were sharing their testimony. And then on the last day, the sun would come out. I mean, you can't script this, right? It was incredible. And I think it points to light as the people gathered together who hadn't seen each other possibly for decades. And then the rain, the tears rise, you said, the sky cleansing what was going on, and then ending again in light. I think there's something is going on in this country right now, and the fact that the 58th call to action will be answered tomorrow with a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, not a holiday, a day of reflection, is very, very important, and that is exactly where we're at right now. So much work, but so much good work. It's good work to do.
I'm glad you brought up the idea that tomorrow is this first national holiday, and I've been reading a lot and hearing a lot about, what's the proper way to spend this day? First time we've done this as a country. And I thought to myself, I really struggle with that, because I've got friends and people who are like, we're going to go here, we're going to go, and it has nothing to do with the TRC, nothing to do. It's a holiday. And I thought, so how do we do this? I was actually up at 2 in the morning thinking, how do we make this work? And I'm like, this is impossible for me to solve at this point in time. But I thought about it, and I thought, okay, so go back to who we all are as individuals. And I thought, well, we accept Remembrance Day. We accept that on that day we remember those who went to war and didn't come home. We remember those who came home and whose lives were permanently changed. And we do that because we've been taught to do that. We've been taught, and it was my great-grandparents who would have faced those atrocities in trenches, and they came home and they told their stories and they were believed, and those stories we felt as a country important enough to carry on through generations. And so I started to make this kind of tie between how I hear a lot of people saying, well, I don't know any residential school survivors, I came here afterwards, like this distancing of ourselves. We would never allow for that to have a place in our national discourse around Remembrance Day. I wasn't at that war, it doesn't matter. And so what I went to sleep thinking was, my role, our role, is to be the voices that set in motion this day, so our great-grandchildren will just step into September 30th the way we step into November 11th. That we do that, that is our job. Tomorrow, all of us here need to have one conversation about why this is such an important beginning for our country. And we need to keep doing it. And I have hope. because I have teenagers, which is weird to say you have hope and you have teenagers in one sentence, let me tell you that much. But I have hope because my 2 girls left today in orange shirts. Their friends came to my house because their parents said, Andrea will have orange shirts. And then I've been getting texts from my girls because at school they're cutting out orange hearts, they're talking about it. This is the hope, this is what we're doing, and this is our job here, is to make sure that tomorrow is the first day that this becomes something that Canadians automatically do, and we know why we're doing it, even though the majority of us were not there. And that we believe those survivors the way we believe those coming back from those horrible places where they were fighting. And so it's a hopeful thing. I think I'm very jazzed about tomorrow, actually. Like, I'm very hopeful. And the other thing that I have to tell you is that it's all about love. And Sheila and I have talked about love. I talk about love with Ry. I talk about love a lot. We also cry a lot. But I really think hope and love go together, and those are really important things for us to be talking about in especially a place like this that it has seen itself as, what's the opposite of subjective? Objective, rational, all of that. The only way we will make space for hope is to make space for love.
Such powerful words, and I, again, come back to the ceremony that we're just leaving from, and I think about the words that Elder May Sam shared, as she on the one hand reflected on her war stories, her stories of survival. And I think it's really, I really want to thank you for bringing in that reference to conflict, because we are at conflict in this country. Let's make no mistake about it. Like, the conflict for Indigenous rights, for Indigenous peoples to be Indigenous, is still active and ongoing. And I think we have to challenge ourselves to become aware of the nature and roots of that conflict, and understand that this is a conflict that has also been waged on non-combatants, right? On children themselves, on families, on love itself. And that is, you know, it's horrific, frankly. It is horrific to understand what has been done here. Inverse to that, though, is what May said, and I've heard this so many times from survivors about love, and what can we do in these times, and what's the antidote to hate? Well, it is love, and she said, you know, hug your children, hug those around you, like, tell them you love them, reach out to that friend. You know, do what you can to strengthen your own families, is what I heard all bundled up. And I think of the words of Eugene Arcand right now so clearly in my mind, because Eugene Arcand, for those of you who haven't had the privilege of hearing him speak, he's remains on the Survivor Circle of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, was a member of the Survivor Circle of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission itself, and he says, you know, hug your kids. Don't ever take that for granted, right? Because that's the nature of the conflict. That's what was interrupted in those residential schools. And it's being present, I suppose. So much of this is just being present for those around us that we have the gift of sharing. And the other thing that I'm hearing myself say too is being present to look around and see yourselves too in this. I mean, we get this, we're super privileged right now because we get to see all of you, but maybe just take a moment to look around and see yourselves, you know, see yourselves coming together. This isn't this panel that's doing this. This is you doing that. This is you opting into the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And I think, Andrea, you've given us some very important guidance in terms of those actions that we can take tomorrow to make the healing normal, right? So, Sheila, I might come back to you, and then we're sort of coming into the close of our panel, so we're heading over to Lisa here to think about what comes next, and as a bit of a setup to our last panel that we're going to have today, which is the future panel. And I think it's important that we talk about this relationship between past, present, and future, and we acknowledge this really important paddle that's here that was carved by a very dear friend and just another one of our extraordinary community members here on campus, Carrie Newman. And he reminds us with these paddles that there's this very important relationship between the past, the present, and the future. And one of the paddles still sits at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. One is traveling across post-secondary institutions. One remains here at the University of Victoria as a daily call to action, a reminder of our work. And the panel that we're going to hold this afternoon, I hope to see you there if you can. We're going to talk about what are the things that we need to be thinking about next. What are the steps on this pathway? What are the research activities? What are the restorative actions that we need to take? And before we go to you, Lisa, I just thought maybe Chancellor Extraordinaire, I'll give you the opportunity to just provide us with a few thoughts from your experience here, and do you think about that which we've shared today, and that which you carry in your heart, and that which you hold?
Well, I have another 3 months as Chancellor in this mystical position of Chancellor, and I've seen so much change in the last 7 years that it gives me hope for the next Chancellor and the next 6 years or 7 years. And I see a stone that's gathering a lot of moss, and I see that, I think it was, sorry about hitting my microphone like that, I should know better, but when Mark was talking about the mountain, about climbing the mountain, this is something that Murray Sinclair, the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, said as well. He said, "We have described for you a mountain, and we call upon you all to do the climbing." And then he modified it a little bit in a conversation and said, well, actually, it's more like a mountain range, because we'll go up, and then we're going to go down, but then we're going to go up again. And then as we go up, we might slide back, and it might be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we're going to climb that mountain. And I feel stoked, if that's not too much of a word from my teenage years, right? Which would have to have been 10 years ago. Anyway, but I really feel optimistic about the future. And one of the biggest changes I've seen that is so beautiful is the opening up of First Peoples House to everybody here on campus, and to see people here on campus attending the ceremonies. It's going to be great when we can rip our masks off and gather together in a bigger way, but those doors are open now. They're open to everybody. Our elder, Skip Dick, who's just always so wonderful at convocation, makes everybody feel welcome. And I think that's part of our duty as well, to make everybody feel welcome. This is all we got, right? But it's so much to work with. And just some beautiful changes have happened on a social level, on a cultural level, beginning events in ceremony with respect and honoring our elders. And then the research, and see how I'm doing this, right? The research, the respect for Indigenous ways of knowing that is now permeating through every faculty at our university. We can't ever rest on our laurels. I've never seen anyone rest on a laurel anyway, have you? But we can't. We've got to keep going. We've got to keep pushing. We can't let our guard down. It's going to be good. We've seen that already. It's getting better. It's getting better. So thank you, Ry. Thank you for letting me speak and to be part of this panel with Andrea and Lisa.
Thank you, Sheila. Before we go to you, Lisa, any final thoughts, Andrea, before we hear a little bit?
I would just say thank you. Thank you for deciding to make this part of your day, to being committed the way you've shown commitment. And I'm just very grateful. very grateful for the fact that you decided to be here with us today. And I just really encourage you on this campus. I want to thank the university administration for making space, for making this fire. I'll hold my hands out to the two beautiful women, Kosiamat and Lolita. I'm grateful to this campus because it's made space for women leaders like yourselves, and you've made this day possible in large part. So I would like to end with my gratitude to the two women who are in front of me.
Speaking of leaders, Lisa, you're Vice President Research here. You're leading the charge in terms of the next phase, so we want to provide you with an opportunity, either from your seat or from the podium, whatever you feel most comfortable with, to help us all understand not only what you've heard, but where we're going as a community. And yeah, I'll just turn it over to you for a bit.
Yeah, thanks, Ry. I'm sitting here trying to figure out, should I stay here or should I go up there? And maybe I'll just stay here because it's so nice to be part of this group. And I think that's what I'll start with, is just to thank you for inviting me to sit here on this stage with the three of you. It's humbling to listen to you and to know of the contributions you've all made, and to be able to, as I said, be included here. I'm a little bit overwhelmed by what I've heard and witnessed this morning. And although I've got these remarks that I'm going to read in the next few minutes, some of this actually feels inadequate based on what I've listened to and seen already today. And I think that's already important progress, right? The fact that we're having these events, that we are learning every day, every week, every month. And so I'm just grateful for all of that, and feeling these emotions as I sit here. And earlier this week in the Board of Governors meeting, I was listening to Rabina, and she was talking about her new portfolio and the work that we need to do here at the University of Victoria to move forward with truth and reconciliation. And her words touched me in the way that they often do, so thank you, Rabina. And one of the things that Rabina said is that we need to tell the truth, and we need to honor the past, but we need to understand that residential schools are not just in the past, they're here with us today. And I heard your words 2 days ago, Rabina, and they struck me, but the meaning of it didn't resonate until this morning, when I heard Mark tell his story and I saw his pain, and when I just was fortunate to be part of the elders event that we just witnessed. And so now I understand how residential schools are with us today. And you even talked about how, after the 215 were discovered, that we had several events to honor the victims and also to give voice to those who were grieving, and how important those events were, but that's not nearly enough, and that we have a lot of work in front of us. And so as I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, I had that in my mind. And the thing that I think about as Vice President Research is how we need to continue to support the Indigenous scholars and students and staff that we have on our campus. And I know that many of them are struggling with these discoveries. They're struggling with where they fit in. And they're looking for signs that white settlers like me are really, truly committed to listening, truly committed to making space for the truth and to walking the path to reconciliation and decolonization. So that leads me to think about the question of, what can a university do? And it turns out that we can do quite a lot. And so I want to turn this around now to, what are those things that we're doing now? And then, as Ry said, to open the conversation for later about the future. And one thing I know we need to do is to create an environment on our campus where our Indigenous scholars Our elders, our knowledge keepers are welcomed where they're included and fully supported. And I know that we've done, as I said a minute ago, Ry, very well at UVic in recruiting people onto our campus. We have many Indigenous scholars, we have students, we have staff, but we know that just bringing them here isn't enough, and that's what I heard as we were doing the consultations. I want to talk a little bit now about Aspiration 2030, our new research and creative works strategy, and how as we were creating this new strategy, I had the opportunity with my team to meet with academic staff and students from all of our academic units and hear their stories, listen to their optimism, listen to their challenges. And one of the things I noted from our Indigenous scholars is that they're really looking for a broader commitment from the university. They're happy to be here. They love being at the University of Victoria, and they very much appreciate the steps the university has already taken, events like this. But they also often feel as if their contributions are not valued, that their success depends on their ability to meet colonial expectations for research progress and outcomes. And they're overwhelmed as they try to meet those expectations while they also strive to serve the communities around them. So they don't have enough time. Time is a barrier to their research, and so is available funding. And I also heard from them that as much as they realize that many institutional plans have now identified Indigenous scholarship as a priority area, and what a welcome step forward that is, it actually on its own hasn't been effective because it has somewhat siloed our Indigenous scholars and said, okay, they're over there, and we're going to do some work to support them, but there's going to be a whole bunch of other things going on that are separate from that, and so we're really not integrating, and we're not walking that path to reconciliation together as a united community. And so we heard this feedback, and we realized that we needed to think very deeply about how we could do something different in Aspiration 2030 and how we could do something more. And we've been helped in this thinking by so many knowledgeable people. Rabina, you've been there, and Ry, and people like Charlotte Lopi and Jeff Corntassel, Onawa McIver, just to name a few. And Ry mentioned Carrie's paddle. We've been inspired by the work of Carrie Newman. He inspired really so much of the entire document. But his art, his words, his vision for honoring nature, these lands, and Ry, as you said, the importance of recognizing the past, present, and future. So Aspiration 2030 is grounded in the history of these lands. It begins with a statement from Kevin. I see our president, Kevin Hall, standing over there, and there's a joint message where we speak to our commitment to actively support the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And with this commitment, we reaffirm our responsibility to push forward with reconciliation and decolonization within our research and creative works on our campus. I could say more about what Aspiration 2030 includes in it, but maybe in the interest of time, Ry, because I don't know how much time we have, I'll just say a couple things. We certainly have that vertical. We have a commitment to Indigenous scholarship as one of our 5 aspirations, where we will put a lot of resources and really support our scholars. But we know that's another vertical pillar, and we wanted to avoid that siloing. So we asked ourselves, how could we also weave a horizontal focus on Indigenous-led scholarship into the strategy? And what we realized is we could include Indigenous-led scholarship as an impact area. And so we've done that, and we've defined it as meaning that at the University of Victoria, we're learning, listening, and nourishing an inclusive community in which Indigenous knowledge systems and worldviews are valued and centered throughout our scholarly practice. So this will ensure that we've got this vertical pillar, but we've also got this horizontal weaving of Indigenous perspectives and ways of knowing throughout our research enterprise. And then we include some specific commitments to Resource Circle, our Indigenous-led research center, to create new opportunities for funding through relational knowledge grants, which will provide our scholars with a way to fund events, to fund feasts, to provide gifts, which will facilitate work with elders and communities on our campus and beyond. So as I mentioned at the outset, we have a lot of work to do. I hope that the commitments I've just articulated will move us in the right direction. I'm just looking at these words here and I'm struggling because I'm still feeling overwhelmed by what I've witnessed today. But the words that I have here are really to state once again that we need to ensure that the 5,000 plus children discovered in unmarked graves at the sites of former residential schools are not forgotten. We must use this moment to confront our nation's dark history. We must honor the memories of these children by working collectively toward respect, truth, and reconciliation, and we must make this work central to our collective efforts. I know, Ry, you said that the next panel this afternoon will be discussing the future with a specific focus on the work that we need to do now to lay the groundwork of that future. But I just wanted to say that I think that Aspiration 2030 is one cog in that process. And I wanted to say here today in front of everyone that I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that this research strategy delivers on these commitments that I've just articulated. And I further would call on all of you to join me and contribute in your own way so we can reveal the truth, so we can end the pain, and we can finally realize our united goal of an inclusive and just future for all. So thank you, Ry. I really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you to my fellow panelists here for sharing your wisdom and observations.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and thank you. Just reiterating what you've already said. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you to all of you that have come to bear witness to this. It means a lot. And I hope what you've heard is not only some tips, not only some calls to action, not only some perhaps warm words and thoughts, but also a profound commitment and an opportunity that is being created for us here as a community to do the exceptional work that's needed. This is, you know, I think back on all of this work that's happened, and I sincerely believe that there's no greater work than we can do than doing this work of broad truth and reconciliation. It's so fundamental to who we are and how we live on these lands, how we see each other and how we treat one another, that I'm just so thankful that we've had such wonderful thoughts and gifts from all these speakers in helping us today better understand where we're at right now. And as we've said, later this afternoon we'll be talking about what lay next, and I would certainly like to extend the invitation out. Thank you again for being here. Thank you again for doing all that you do. It's important to recognize that there are residential school survivors in our midst, and of course we acknowledge and honor them today, right now. As you do head home, or you head to your classes or whatever it is that you're up to next, do take good care of yourself as well. If you're in need of support, there are supports for you. If you go into the library, there's some panels in there that list some of the resources and supports that are available for you. Don't suffer in silence. If you look around, there are a lot of people supporting you on an individual and on a collective basis, and do reach out to somebody if you need to talk to somebody, because while this work is so important, it is hard. It is hard work, and it's heavy on the heart sometimes, but it also fills up the heart with a lot of hope, a lot of optimism as we confront the great challenges of our time. So, I wish you all well. Thank you again to the panel. It's such a treat spending time with you, and I wish you the very best in the rest of your day. And hopefully we'll see you later this afternoon.